All right, welcome to our War Media Bears pregame for Week 13. It is Bears Packers week once again. The 3-9 Bears host the 4-8 Packers at Soldier Field. I am Saul Rodriguez, along with my war colleague Ryan Bukovetsky. How you doing today, man?
Doing good. Trying to get excited for this game now that we know Justin Fields is playing and Aaron Rodgers is going. Maybe a fun Sunday still left in this NFL season for the Bears.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, leading up to the game, or at least to start the week, I should say. I was like, it's going to be another matchup of backup quarterbacks as it was last week, and and the Bears obviously came out on the short end of that one against Mike White. But now that Fields is playing, we know that's going to happen. There's a lot of chatter. Some people are happy he's playing. Other people are like, what's the use of him playing? Just shut him down. Season's over. But what's your take on that? Like, do you think the Bears, should have just shut him down, or do you think it's fun that they're putting him in this big matchup and then seeing what happens?
I'm all for if we want to be as cautious as possible to make
Mhm.
sure that there's not going to be any long-term effects or anything like that. Sure, but I'm not at all in team shut him down whatsoever. It's just you're injured and when you're healthy enough to play and we as a franchise understand that extra layer, and not we, you and I'm saying as the Bears, kind of a
Mhm.
royal, if we are looking at Justin Fields, we have that extra layer of this guy is our long-term chance for success. So we need to be extra cautious. As long as he kind of checks all those boxes, you play him. Like, I don't think you definitely don't shut him down. He is just still not there as a passer when you talk
Mhm.
about him in the NFL, what a standard he is, or the standard of passing. He's just not quite there yet, and he needs all the reps you can get. We talk about it all the time. You can't get better from the sideline. You can't get better from just practice. You need to actually play in these games, get actual live reps, full speed, NFL speed on the field to get better at these things. And I'm sure he, just knowing at least from what we've seen of him and what he's given out outwardly, he is a highly driven competitor. So I think he wants to be as threatening to defenses and as great of a player as possible. And in order for him to make that progress as a passer, he needs to play. And then that combination with his ability to run, I mean, that's what's going to make him just an all-time special type player if everything works out.
Yeah, exactly. And I also thought about that too, because in the sense of him throwing, this could benefit him throwing, right? Because him, and I was going to ask, that's my next question for you, is that how do you think he's going to play? Do you think him himself is going to be cautious of the run? Because the Packers defense, I mean, they let up, they're very weak. I mean, they just gave up 157 rushing yards to Jalen Hurts. But I think it is a great opportunity for Fields, because if he does play it cautiously, he can work on his throwing game and improve that. And just like as you're saying, you're not going to get better on the sidelines. Yeah, if he's healthy enough to play, it's only going to help him in the long run. Because obviously the rest of the season obviously doesn't matter, but to him personally, it matters a whole lot to his development. But yeah, what do you think about his running game? Do you think he's going to be aggressive, or do you think he's going to work on his throwing game against this Packers defense? Is just like the Bears, very weak.
Um, I think when you're as young of a player as he is, and he's clearly not mastered kind of the quarterback position,
Mm,
I don't think he's in a position. I get where you're coming from, but I
mm,
guess personally, I don't see it that way. Like, if let's say Tom Brady was a dual threat, and right now he was a little bit injured with his leg, and he was trying to like focus on passing, I think that's part of his game. He could definitely do that type thing.
mm.
Justin Fields, I don't think is there as a passer. So to just say, let me just sit back and work on my passing, I think that's going to be very difficult for him to just play that way. I think he needs to play his game. And that's why I would think the Bears went through, A through XYZ, like as many of these little markers as possible before really deciding to play him. I mean, it's possible, that they're driven to beat the Packers because we know how much ownership loves that. But I would think you're trying to preserve Justin Fields for the long term. He's not out there playing unless he's ready to go. And if he's ready to go, I think you play your game. simply like that. And if you see opportunities to run, and I don't think Justin Fields is the type that's just, one read, it's not there, let me run. No, he's actually reading. He's going one, two, three, all the way down. And if he feels that based on the pressure that's coming immediately or just what he can't find as obviously open, he's taking off and running. And I think you just got to continue to play that type of game, throw that ball as much as possible just to continue to develop the passer of Justin Fields. Now, maybe to answer your question in terms of play calling, I would like to see Luke Getzey like reel back a little bit on the quarterback designed run plays that he calls.
Mm,
Maybe not exactly X-nay everything, because I wouldn't agree with that. But if, let's say, you're going into it with 10 to 15 plays, maybe you cut that back to, 5 or 10. Maybe you try to stick around 5 if you're normally around 10. Just cut those back, add in either just actual runs by David Montgomery or, whatever stable of running backs you have, or just let those plays with the bootlegs or the RPOs or anything with Justin Fields where he has the ability to be potentially dual threat instead of just automatically go ahead and run this.
yeah, no, that is true, and also I also understand the fact that, I mean, a lot of those running plays just come, out of nowhere. I'm sure most of them aren't not even necessarily designed, as much as, I mean, I'm sure once, later on in his career, there might be more of those design plays, but obviously with the lack of weapons, as we always talk about, I feel like he does find himself going running all over the place. But on the other side of things, the quarterback for the Packers, he was in doubt midweek to play. He came out of the primetime Sunday night game against the Eagles with a rib injury. Were you surprised to see him, ready to play for Sunday, or is it also one of those things where he's not going to miss an opportunity to, you know, continue his ownership of the Bears, as he says, because he's obviously 23-5 all time against these guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that injury. I guess it is odd that he's playing, and it almost feels as odd as Justin Fields playing.
Hmm.
But you would think the same thing that Green Bay, especially with how much they're tied to him financially, they're not going to just, hey, go out there and potentially get yourself really hurt for and really become damaged goods type thing.
Hmm.
I would think that, they'd be comfortable seeing Jordan Love play if they didn't feel Aaron Rodgers was capable of playing without limitations. So he must be able to play with those or without those limitations for him to start. So it's at least an area if that beleaguered defensive line of the Bears could ever get a little bit of pressure. I mean, he might be vulnerable. It might be an opportunity where you say, hey, if we can get those quarterback hits and get those pressures and get them on the ground, maybe we can force a mistake because that, area of his body might tense up or whatever.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to come down ultimately to which one of these horrible defenses really stands out as the better on that Sunday.
Yeah, and then what's funny too is that with the Packers is that even if Aaron Rodgers goes to the bench, I mean Jordan Love looked pretty good on Sunday. Threw for a touchdown after he came in. So a lot of people thought it was safe to assume Jordan Love was going to start this Sunday, because they're like, why not? Why risk it? But I think, yeah, for me, I thought, Aaron Rodgers, there's no way he misses this game, because his future's uncertain with things going on with the organization and stuff. He definitely wants to play every game against the Bears. But another question too I had was, man, I mean, injuries are a common thing in the NFL, obviously, but the Bears, I feel like it's just nonstop, and they had more injuries this week. Eddie Jackson, Darnell Mooney's out for the season. Trevor Simeon's out for the season. Not that he plays a lot, but I mean, there's just injuries everywhere. At this point, we were built to lose the rest of the games, but now it's a little kind of a more of a sure thing. Do you almost kind of like looking besides that whether you think that we're built to lose the rest of the games left in the season, is that something you would prefer? Is like at this point, is like even if we lost to the Packers, or are you kind of like rooting for this, at least this win?
Um, for me, it's maybe more analytically driven more than fan driven. Just personally,
Mhm.
I don't mind them being high up in the draft. I think that that is something that's going to work out well for them, but that doesn't mean I just want them to lose like crazy. I was fine with some of these games, like when they played the Lions or the Falcons, where it's like, if you can win the game, go ahead and win it. But ultimately, all I care about is the development of Justin Fields and his progression, and anybody of any kind of, I guess, cachet, if you will, with the front office that currently is here. I'm looking at like Demarcus Robinson kind of thing, or a Dominique Robinson, I'm sorry, on the defensive line. Can he flash at all? That maybe you feel a little bit better about him. Is there any young player on defense that you can say, maybe there's something there? Is it some of these tryout people like Taco Charlton? Do you find a gem hidden somewhere? Like, most likely they're not going to find anything. So what really is important is Justin Fields' development, and then I would put Chase Claypool development right underneath that, because you're really hoping that that investment of what would be kind of like the first pick in the second round, with the Dolphins losing their first round pick, that would be an extremely valuable pick in this draft. Not saying that there is necessarily a guy that would have been Chase Claypool potential, but you really need to try to nurture and develop whatever you can out of him so that he becomes that number one type receiver that you're hoping he can be. So if they can just continue to develop, the W or the L really doesn't matter too much to me. But ultimately, I think it's better if they're losing games just to be higher up, where you can, to me, the best case scenario is somebody wants a quarterback, you're sitting there at number two, and you can get a king's ransom from multiple teams fighting over that ability to draft somebody else off the board.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good look at it, and it's especially because I feel like uh, also when you look at the draft and just the way the Bears, and I think you kind of alluded to it with what you were saying, is like just the Bears obviously never necessarily drafted well, and also uh, you don't always want to. Yeah, as a fan, from a fan perspective, it's not like rooting for them to lose is kind of an odd thing, but if there's if you are necessarily like saying, oh, like I want them to lose, like what's the bad, what's the worst that could happen to them lose the game and then get a higher draft pick. This is the one game though that no matter where they are in the standings, like I want them to win no matter what, because it's just always good to beat the
I'll,
Packers because
I'll
it rarely
never,
happens.
I'll never soften us
Right.
in Green Bay. That
Yeah, yeah,
I'll never
exactly.
be like,
Yeah,
oh man, that draft pick. I'll give you that. I'll never do that.
yeah, no, yeah. I'm like, I'll
I
definitely.
guess,
Uh,
when you just look at it, they've lost what, 20 out of the last 23 meetings against Green Bay.
mm,
You can't even really think about them winning. It's hard to even,
yeah,
it's like,
mm,
I guess I'm cool with them losing. Like, that's the only
yeah,
perspective you can come from. Are you going
yeah.
to be mad that they lost, or are you going to be cool that they lost? Well, maybe we'll get to that with the predictions later.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to next is with the prediction. I'll go first, but the I think ultimately, no matter where we're at, because you look at it and it's like you look at the Packers, as I mentioned a couple times, that weak defense. They're coming off, they're playing to the Eagles and whatever, blah blah blah, and the Bears have Fields who's been electric running, and David Montgomery's holding his own. Obviously, he's the starting running back now all to himself now that Herbert's injured. But ultimately, I think Aaron Rodgers will be fine, and he'll be able to get plenty of throws off to be able to find get a victory. So I'll say Fields gets a couple moments, a couple magical moments, and puts up a fight, but ultimately, Packers come out on top. I'll say 30-20.
Yeah, I really like a lot of your logic and what you're predicting overall. I agree. I think, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's just against bad defenses. He's probably gonna just get you, unless you got a guy that can get him equally as back, and maybe it comes down to who gets the football last. And I think Justin Fields is on that trajectory, but like you said, not quite there right yet. I could just see a few times where, a bad penalty, a long third down, and Justin Fields as a passer isn't quite there. But like you said, I really do expect a fight, and I think it'll be closer than we had all expected at the beginning of the
Mm,
week when his availability was up in the air. Um, Boy, I like your score a lot. I think I'll mimic it a little bit. I think I'll just go 30-23.
Oh yeah,
And the Green Bay, obviously, just because of my pessimism from before, I think it was pretty certain which one I would pick. But if you could just get a lucky bounce or two, I don't really expect interceptions, but if you can get a lucky bounce or two with a fumble, and if they can play discipline, because this is one of those games, and it's going to be obviously all year long. When you're not a talented team, it comes down to penalties,
hmm
turnovers, all the mistakes. Did you limit all the available mistakes possible so that maybe your crappy talent has a chance at the end to maybe win, kind of thing. I think the Bears aren't quite there because of Justin Fields, but that's what it really comes down. They got to be at least penalty free on offense type thing, and you got to get a lucky bounce on special teams or defense and steal a possession.
Yeah, and I think also like it would be naive to be like, oh, the Packers are playing bad football, or compared to other years, and for them and just in general to be like, oh, it's gonna be an easy win, like or something like that. Saying, especially when as you said, we've lost like 20 of the last 23. So ultimately,
And it sucks too. So I think that Rogers Watson connection,
yeah,
there is something going on there, and
yep,
with a really weak Bears defense, like you've seen it before with Randall Cobb, Jordy
mm,
Nelson, Devontae Adams. Like when Rodgers kind of has a dude, it seems like those guys just make big plays on the Bears all the time, consistently, and usually it's the one that kind of rips your heart out. So obviously hoping against all of that, but that those kind of things where Rodgers has this potentially game-breaking target, the Bears just don't have a ton that you can look at as a reliable. We can count on this, other than Justin Fields with his legs right now.
yeah, it's true. It doesn't matter, you know,
And I guess the run game, I will say the run
yeah.
game in general, but you know, if you give up a 70-yard bomb, it's really hard to, let's run game our way back into it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's true what you were saying about Watson is like, and just in general, like I feel like it doesn't matter where Cobb is at in his game. I feel like he comes to play every time he plays the Bears. It's just it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's so yeah, anybody, but especially Watson. He's been looking really good. But yeah, it's a good place to wrap things up for this week's War Media Bears pregame. I want to thank Ryan Bukovetsky for joining me, and hope you enjoy the game. This is Saul Rodriguez signing off.